session, I introduced you to the marketing toolbox, or as it's commonly called, the marketing mix. These four variables that are conveniently all titled with words starting with the letter P that we as marketers use to create and execute marketing strategy. So in our last session, we looked closely at the product and price variables. And our next session, we'll look at promotion. In this section, we're looking at the place, or we could also call it distribution variable. And the interesting thing about this variable as well, the product variable seems very interesting. You're looking at innovation and research and development, and pricing strategy is something that we as consumers deal with every day. And promotion, of course, is probably the most the sexiest and glamorous of the variables, because there we're talking about advertising and sales, and where a majority of money is invested in executing marketing planning. But the placement variable, I think, is probably the most important. It's the one that we live and move and breathe in every day. I think much more so than we move through advertisements or make decisions about product development or pricing strategy, because place involves all of the different decisions that are made to get products into the hands of consumers. And if you think about all the purchases you've made just today, everything that you've purchased came through some type of distribution channel, whether it was a suit, a soccer ball, a sports car, probably not that sports car, or a cup of Starbucks coffee. All of those items came from a source and moved through a series of different steps or intermediaries through a channel to find its way to you. You see, it's not enough for us just to research, develop, and produce products. We also have to get them into the hands of our consumers, and that often is the most logistically challenging of the steps. So this is the way I define the place, the essence of the place variable. And really it comes down to these issues of getting our product, and this also applies to intangible service offerings, but to our customers at the right place, a place where they can access it, which is not something that we can take for granted, and also at the right time. You think of all the different products that have, and we've talked about seasonality, and we looked at consumer behavior and the purchase variable, that each product offering has its own inherent seasonality, different times of the day, week, month, or year, where it's increases or decreases in demand, and also in the right quantity. We've talked about retailers and Black Friday and the Christmas shopping season, how critical it is for all of their forecasting and distribution efforts to culminate in getting the right amount of toys on shelves in time for parents to come buy them for their children for Christmas. So this is the place variable answers and provides tools for us to answer all of these questions. The essential question that we ask when we look at the place variable, and the place variable allows us to answer, is how am I going to get my product into my customers' hands? I'm so averse to reading my slides that even though I had a very clear question, I felt like I had to change it so as not to read it directly from the slide, but I think it's pretty clear there. And we answer that question as we design an answer. We have to ask these sub-questions. And the first one, probably the most obvious, is will I sell direct or through some combination of intermediaries? We call those channel partners. And if we're thinking about starting up our own business, that's important. Is certainly, well, whether we're offering a tangible or intangible product, it usually is not practical financially or logistically to sell directly to every single customer. Now, if you're selling think about it, there's a constellation of smartphone application developers. They could sell their applications through their own websites or blog sites, and you could download them. And of course, you can't do that with Apple because they have a closed system where all of the apps that go onto Apple phones, unless you jailbreak your phone, have to come through the App Store. But it works the same way for Google and the Google Play, where both Google and Apple provide a distribution channel for software or application developers to sell their products to Apple or to Android customers. And you think about the benefit to the application developer, that small group of programmers doesn't have the marketing capability or the intelligence or the time to promote their new little app, whatever that little app may be, some heart rate monitor or calorie counter or like a TripAdvisor app for researching hotels. For them, it would be exorbitantly expensive and time-consuming to try to reach out to all of the multitudes of people that might be interested in their application. But by selling the application through the iTunes store, that developer is able to get access to thousands, millions of potential customers and give them easy access to that application. Apple also provides the ability to take payments from those customers in that secure environment and then transfer for a portion of that payment back to the application developer. So by acting as an intermediary, Apple has provided a tremendous amount of value to the application developer, who can spend their time focusing on improving their products and creating new products, as opposed to trying to figure out how to get their application into the hands of consumers and then consummate those sales. So most often, most companies are selling through some combination of intermediaries, and we're going to look at what some of the possible arrangements are in just a moment. Another question we have to ask ourselves is, how will I coordinate with and compensate my channel partners? Obviously, Apple is expecting some compensation for facilitating each of those app download or app purchase transactions, just like Amazon does, just like Walmart does for the thousands of different suppliers all over the world that sell their products through Walmart stores. Walmart expects a percentage of those sales, or sometimes they expect flat fees. It varies by retailer. So there's a compensation question that has to be asked and answered. And then also coordination has to be another question we have to consider, because we have to determine what services, if we're looking at ourselves, so we supply a product, we manufacture a product. Let's say we manufacture bicycle tires for recreational bicycles. And so we've decided that we are going to sell our tires through sporting goods stores. And then the question becomes, well, how much of the marketing effort will the sporting goods retailers be responsible for, and how much will we as the supplier be responsible for? At its simplest, we could say we simply manufacture these tires and we sell them to these retailers, and the retailer is responsible to advertise these products, to inventory them at their stores, to sell them, to have salespeople who understand how to sell these tires, to take the money from the purchase, and possibly even to provide after-sales support if someone runs over a nail and needs to have a tube replaced, or whatever the service might be in a bicycle tire. So in that situation, the manufacturer is relying on the retail channel partner to provide almost all of the marketing support after manufacturing. Of course, the retail channel partner is going to expect to be compensated for that. So we might say, well, what we'll do is we will manufacture and supply these tires to the retail store, but rather than have the retail store manage after-sales support requests, we are going to direct our customers to contact us directly for support or repair requests. Or we may be responsible for advertising these tires or creating point-of-purchase displays that the retailers can put in their stores to increase awareness of this product within that store environment. So there can be a variety or not a variety, but a range of different options we have about how much or little we want to be involved in the marketing effort. And then the third question we have to ask is, how will we prevent conflict between our channel partners? Because most often, we're not just selling through one channel partner, maybe one retail store. We might be selling through multiple stores within the same geographic region. Each of those stores is going to be interested in maximizing its profit and is going to be concerned that other retailers that we've partnered with in their area might encroach on their sales opportunities. This is very common within franchising. So if you want to open up a McDonald's franchise, McDonald's will only open up a certain number of franchises in each geographic area to preserve the value of its existing franchise businesses. So if you were paying McDonald's hundreds of thousands of dollars to open up a franchise here in Riverside, you would be upset if McDonald's allowed another person to open up a McDonald's right next door to you, because that would seem like that would be a conflict of interest on McDonald's part. So McDonald's, being the experienced franchise or that they are, takes a disciplined approach to making sure that there are only so many McDonald's within a certain area. It seems like they're ubiquitous and all over the place, but in fact, there is an approach to that ensures that each store has a fixed geographic area that it's responsible for and that's protected. Contrast that with Starbucks. Those Starbucks stores are owned by Starbucks Corporation. So Starbucks can open up as many stores as they want and doesn't have any channel conflicts. What Starbucks does have is it has tremendous distribution costs. It has to maintain rents or lease payments for all of its stores and all of its personnel, and the overhead associated with each of those locations. So in Starbucks calculation, it makes more sense for them to sell direct to their customers than it does to sell their product through intermediates. So this chart should look familiar to you because, of course, you read chapter 12, and it provides us a visual on the different types of channel designs that are available to us. We talked about A is the direct consumer approach design, and again, for most certainly business to consumer type companies, a direct consumer path usually does not make a lot of sense because of the costs and the logistical challenges associated with effectively marketing and managing each of those relationships directly. So most often we will see some combination, usually of B and C. So if we are Nike and we sell shirts through different clothing retailers, but of course now with the advent of e-commerce, we also have e-commerce options that are available. These are also distribution channels, but they function in pretty much the same way that physical distribution channels function. All the same issues take place. If we are in a company that sells to other businesses, so a business to business concern, we might opt for designs like D or even E, where let's say we Coca-Cola provides an interesting example for us. In fact, they are highlighted at the beginning of chapter 12. And if you look at Coca-Cola's distribution operation in the United States and in most Western countries, they've got a very sophisticated, elaborate distribution structure where Coca-Cola Company is primarily responsible to manufacture the concentrate that is used to make, is mixed with carbonated water to make Coca-Cola and all the other many types of carbonated beverages that they manufacture and sell. And they're also responsible for their marketing But most of the product comes through bottling distributors who have agreements with Coca-Cola to receive the concentrate, to mix and bottle the product, and then distribute them to different parts of the United States. In fact, different distributors will have protected territories that they will distribute to. And so there's a very well developed infrastructure that Coca-Cola has been using for decades in the United States that makes the distribution of its product very efficient. You contrast that with how Coca-Cola distributes its product in Africa, and it's a very different situation. So, in keeping with their goal to get their product cold and close to the customer, and without having the types of infrastructure available to them that, as they do in the United States, Coca-Cola has to deliver from 160 plants scattered throughout the African continent that then distribute out to 4,000 regional distributors. And these are businesses that are often as simple as some guys that have a few shipping containers, and they will receive the Coca-Cola bottles, which are recycled numerous times before they are disposed of, which keeps the cost of Coca-Cola down, but enables Coca-Cola to turn a profit on the product regardless. But because there aren't sophisticated distribution companies and channels set up throughout Africa, oftentimes they have these guys these individual business owners that will come to these containers, these distribution facilities every day, every few days, and load up their dollies that then they will run to local shops, many of whom have very limited refrigeration, if any refrigeration space. Coca-Cola provides them with coolers or chillers because they understand it's important that their customer consume the product cold. That's part of the experience, and we talked about that in the consumer decision process, that part of what makes Coca-Cola satisfying is when the product is cold and refreshing. But it's just a very different, more rustic, very resourceful approach to getting their products in the hands of customers throughout Africa. Apple provides an interesting example too. They use what we call a multi-channel approach, which most large companies do, which is a combination of selling through intermediaries, but also selling direct, which, as you can imagine, could, if it's not done thoughtfully, create a lot of conflict. If Apple were to be seen as competing with its channel partners like Best Buy or wireless phone carriers for its different products, then those channel partners would be less likely to sell Apple products, which, as this chart shows us, would be devastating for Apple financially because they rely on channel partners like the wireless cell phone carriers and retailers to sell a large portion of their products. But it's interesting to see by product line how their products sell through the different channels. So a majority of their computers are sold direct, while a majority of their phones are sold through channel partners, in this case through the wireless phone carriers. And the iPad sales split roughly evenly across the channel. So Apple, as powerful as a brand as it is, relies on the support of its channel partners for a large chunk of its sales. We saw this chart when we were talking about pricing strategy, and I bring it back in just to remind us that we have to be conscious of the weight that each layer of distribution lays on top of the final price of our products, and then work backwards from that to figure out what is our break-even point. Because while it may make it easier for us to have a lot of layers in between us and our customer, all of those layers, while they can add value, other than in terms of marketing support or covering inventory costs, so that if I sell my product through Walmart, then I can ship product to them and they can store it in their warehouse. Actually, a better example, because Walmart pushes inventory management back to its suppliers so that Walmart can reduce its supply chain costs. A better example is Amazon. Amazon, and we're going to talk about them in just a moment, has developed these massive warehouses, very sophisticated use of robotics and algorithms to arrange products in the most logical places based on uh, the trends they see in products that are ordered together, not just by the same people, but at the same time in the same region. It is an amazing development. But Amazon, especially for its Prime type products, physically receives products, stores them in these warehouses, and so that benefits the supplier because now the supplier does not have to maintain physical warehouse space. And Amazon also, of course, puts these suppliers in contacts with buyers. It takes the payments and sends the payment back to the supplier, makes the process very convenient, but in exchange, Amazon expects a significant portion, a percentage of each sale. So while Amazon makes it easier for us to get our products into the hands of our customers, depending on how much of many of their services we use to accomplish that sale, they also increase or reduce the profitability of those products. So we have to think about what is the right combination for our business to maximize the value of the channel, but also to minimize its cost and its impact on our profitability. Tesla is an interesting example for us to look at because many of us have purchased cars or motorcycles, and most of them sell through a very well-developed distribution network of auto dealerships. In fact, we are situated right across the street from a very large complex of auto dealerships, and that is the way business has been done for decades in the United States and in much of the rest of the world. Car manufacturers manufacture and advertise or market their cars, and they delegate the responsibility for sales and for service to authorized dealers. And in many states, there are legal structures in place that prevent car manufacturers from selling directly to consumers. Enter Tesla, and Tesla has made a, a very intentional choice to bypass auto dealerships and sell directly to customers. In fact, I believe at the Tyler Mall we have a Tesla dealership. I know that in the Brea Mall there's not a dealership, it is a showroom. Not that you can buy the car right there because you actually buy Teslas online, and it's because where our customers find our products affects their perception of our products. And an example that I'll give you, a simple example, is a pair of jeans, and how your perception of the value of those jeans depends on where you find them. So if you were to find that same pair of Calvin Klein jeans hanging on a rack in Nordstrom in that kind of um, should I look the elegant and uh, very uh, thoughtfully laid out retail space with customer salespeople that are knowledgeable and sophisticated, and they're charging $100 for a pair of jeans. In that context, that might make sense. If you were to contrast that with going to a warehouse store like Costco and finding the same pair of jeans laying in a pile on a folding table, your perception of the value of that product would be changed. I'm certain of that. I know that my perception of value is in large part determined by the environment within which I come into contact with that product. It's that old saying that we're known by the company we keep. Well, our brands, our products are known by the company they keep and where our customers find them. Remember that we looked at L'Oreal when we were talking about brand management and their disciplined approach to ensuring that the dozens of products that they have in their portfolio, very similar products, don't compete with one another, and also, of course, that they're very clearly positioned in the larger marketplace. And one of the ways that L'Oreal achieves that clarity in distinguishing each of their many brands is through a disciplined approach to how they bring their products to market, their distribution strategy. So while you might find Yves Saint Laurent in a specially designed portion of Nordstrom, you wouldn't find that same product in Target, but you will find L'Oreal's Garnier product in Target. And of course, there you can see an example of using pricing strategy to drive more turnover in that product. But you wouldn't find Garnier in that same Yves Saint Laurent product, even though both are manufactured by the same company. So it's an example of a company using distribution strategically to reinforce the brand position that they intend those products to have. So I think we've talked about different types of channel designs, but here we have an example, and this looks like Apple, and it looks like a lot of the larger brands that we work with, how they interact with their channel partners. So if we, again, let's say, in fact, let's not keep using Apple. Let's look at a different brand. Let's look at, well, let's see. I was going to say pharmaceuticals manufacturer, but that doesn't work as well. Let's use, I don't want to stay away from computers because we use them so much and cars are so obvious. Let's think of something else that we commonly use that is relatable. Okay, I thought of a good example. I recently purchased a laptop computer for one of my daughters at Costco. It was a Hewlett-Packard notebook, and it was a product that I've seen advertised online at different places. Google runs ad for these different Chromebook type products. So in this sense, HP is a supplier, and they were responsible in partnership with Google sometimes to advertise these Chromebook products, and but they weren't selling them directly. When I went to looking to see where I could purchase one of these, I discovered that one of the retail partners was Costco, which I'm a member of. So I'm not bragging, but I just am. And so I went to Costco and I purchased the computer and took possession of it there. And then about a year later, the keyboard went out, and so Costco has a service they offer for customers who buy computers from them, that they provide a certain level of support. And so I called them, and they determined that they would need to involve Hewlett Packard directly on the project, and so they got Hewlett Packard involved, and ultimately I ended up mailing the computer back to HP for HP to service, repair, and then send back to me. So it's an example of HP as a supplier sometimes interacting directly with me, certainly on the advertising and then on the post-sale repair and side. But they sold the product initially through Costco and also provided some level of after-sale support, obviously, and returns and the transaction, taking my payment and then sending those funds on to Hewlett Packard. So it's an example of a supplier that uses both direct and indirect or intermediate methods to manage the customer relationship. Services also are distributed through channels. May not be as apparent, but the issues that we've been talking about, the concepts, apply just as much to services, intangibles, as they do to tangible products. ATMs are examples of a distribution strategy that banks employ, so they can extend their reach out to their customers outside the walls of their physical banks. Expedia and sites like Expedia and Hotwire and Travelocity, and of course Priceline are examples of distribution channels for airlines and for hotels to, again, extend out the reach of their services. But they're not just providing advertising support. Of course, they're also providing help with sales and with servicing and refunds and cancellations and things like that. Now, I've already mentioned McDonald's. Franchising is a distribution model. It's a way for McDonald's to sell its restaurant concept to business owners who then take responsibility for business in their area. But again, franchising is another example of a distribution strategy. And for increasingly, the software that we use is delivered, is hosted. We don't usually get boxes of software anymore, whether they be applications on our personal computers, MacBooks, or on our tablets or phones. Most of those applications are now hosted on the cloud, on the internet, and then we access them online. That is, again, the cloud is another example of a distribution model, of course, in this case for an intangible product, but a distribution channel nonetheless. And of course, Amazon has become the ultimate distribution channel, certainly in business to consumer markets, but they've also, in the last year or so, gotten into business to business type markets as well. So you can buy mops and hard hats, as you can see on this, industrial manufacturing and testing supplies also. So Amazon is dramatically changing companies' distribution strategy and changing the way that companies bring their products to market. So it's a variable that we need to be aware of as marketers, and the role Amazon might play in our business. To that end, I have posted a video in the week 5 folder. You probably are, well, you already saw that now because you found this, that I would encourage you to watch. It's an inside look at Amazon's distribution center. It's dated back to late 2013, so some of the information is a little bit dated. Most of it's still up to date. And just a very interesting look into how they provide distribution services for their suppliers and for their customers, and give you some ideas if you get into a position at some point in your career where you need to make decisions about distribution strategy, some of the logistical issues that are involved in that. This is one of the questions that was on the quiz, and hopefully now, or hopefully before you took the quiz, by reading the chapter 12 information, you would know the correct answer to this question and realize that middlemen, these channel partners, aren't just adding cost, but if we employ and arrange them intelligently, they're adding massive amounts of value, and they are relieving a lot of the burden that we as suppliers would have to absorb were it not for their help bringing our products to market, promoting them, selling them, servicing them afterwards. So the correct answer for this question was D.